following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op, in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com.
Question: who is lying to you today? The media? Social media? Big business? Politicians? Actually, it's probably all of them. That led me to create this podcast named They're All Lying to Us. We do research and present findings and opinions on political, social, and cultural topics to inform our communities about what's really going on. You know, stuff that affects everyday American life. We also invite you to share your voice and help us recreate real-life interactions as they were had in the pre-digital era. I'm your host for these conversations. My name is Andy. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the They're All Lying to Us podcast. They're All Lying to Us, which we know by its acronym TALUS, T-A-L-U-S. We have a website where you can find more information, copies of earlier blogs and podcasts. And you can also find our podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can see the video version of the podcast with our wonderful and beautiful faces in front of you on our YouTube channel. The website is www.lyingtous.com. And today is May 23rd, 2024. So this is the day we're recording this session, and was looking for some stuff that was going on of interest in the news right now. And actually I came across something that is of less interest than maybe one might think. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that and why that might be. And that is the Trump hush money trial. Now, in a general sense, it's a pretty significant legal and political event. However, despite its implications, it has garnered surprisingly limited interest from the American public, including me. This session will explore that a little bit. Why? Just do a quick review of the details of the case and go into the reasons why maybe I'm not alone, according to some of the polls that show that the American public is not really engaged in this trial, not following it like we might have with the OJ trial of the 1990s and other legal proceedings, and look at the reasons why that might be going on. So quickly, just to remind everybody of the boring facts of the case, in case you, like we're talking about, haven't been following it. The hush money trial centers on allegations that Donald Trump, our former president, made illegal payments to silence individuals who claim to have extramarital affairs with them. Most prominently, Stormy Daniels, who alleged that she received some $130,000 in exchange for her silence in October, which was during and just before the presidential election of that year. Now, this payment and others like it are at the heart of the legal proceedings. Now, Trump faces several charges related to the payments, including conspiracy, campaign finance violations, and obstruction of justice. The core argument from the prosecution is that these payments were made to influence the outcome of the 2016 election by preventing damaging information from surfacing, thereby constituting a breach of federal election laws. The defense, on the other hand, argues that the payments were personal transactions meant to avoid embarrassment and had no bearing on the election. They maintain that the charges are politically motivated, aimed at undermining Trump's political career and legacy. Well, I've been thinking about this a little bit and just doing a little bit of digging. I have found some polls that show that Americans are not that engaged in this trial. And even though maybe some 50+% of the persons polled believe that Trump is guilty of whatever these charges are, which I can't even, are too complicated to really explain other than what I just gave you as an overview. So I was kind of thinking about, why is it that I'm sitting here saying, who cares? And it maybe a lot of you out there and a lot of the American public seems to be sharing that same sentiment. I mean, the first thing we look to is kind of one of the hallmarks of the They're All Lying to Us program, is that the media is so disparate today. Our information comes from so many sources. It's not like it was in the pre-1990s era, where we had a few TV networks, a few newspapers and other outlets. that gave us the majority of our news. And it was fairly centralized. Now we have this system that goes through all sorts of other places, comes off our social media. Young people get theirs off other types of social media. Old people get it off Twitter and Facebook. And we're just not finding the same information. So maybe it's the lack of focus on this has something to do with the fact that we're not being spoon fed one thing by the media. Um, in addition, I think people are just kind of fed up. There's probably a general lack of faith in the judicial system overall, our political system as well. There's certainly, as Trump's defense team has pointed out, and some of his surrogates, that there's perceptions of political gamesmanship. You have to wonder whether or not this case would be even prosecuted if it wasn't Trump involved, because people with money usually get away with shit like this. And then there's political fatigue and just general apathy. I think everybody's, most of us have lived through, thankfully, the COVID years and the election of 2020, which were two traumatic events going on simultaneously that year. And now we're just kind of replaying it all. And we have two characters involved in the election of this year that makes us fairly disinterested. We have good old Joe and wonderful Donald as our choices, and that doesn't seem that great either. So those are just some quick thoughts on it, and I'd really like to turn over and have a further discussion with our producer Rich, and just talk about it kind of like two regular folks trying to up and wait.
Just regular folk.
Yeah, just pretty much. Not I don't know who's regular anymore. I certainly wouldn't. I said regular, but not normal.
Right.
Just to be clear, don't want to be accused of that, and I wouldn't want to accuse you of that either.
Oh,
But
appreciate that.
Rich, have you been giving this thing much due, or just like hearing the little snippets along the way? And
I have always been very interested in the presidential election, and I have to admit, I just can't bear it this year. I just it's like it's going back a few years where people were sick of seeing Brady in the Super Bowl. It's like we've done this. We're sick of these guys. They're just not. I don't want either one of them. So I think that because of that type of fatigue has gone over into the trials. My thing about there's so many charges in 4 different jurisdictions, and this case in particular that you're mentioning is the one that I care the least about. I was much more concerned about what happened in Florida with the papers and the documents, and I'm in Georgia than I am with this one.
Yeah,
and I think that's why a lot of people just aren't really following this one.
Yeah, it's a I mean, kind of. It should be a fun trial. You got porn stars and this bedroom talk stuff going on and all that goofy kind of stuff.
Part of it is we can't watch the trial.
Yeah, that's true. Right. With
We get
OJ,
little
remember
crayon
if you're old
drawings
enough
and
to
stuff.
remember the OJ trial, which
Right.
set the world record for, and ironically, OJ just passed away a few weeks ago.
Like Court TV, CNN.
Yeah.
They made their bones with
Right.
this.
And
then the Menendez trial and the Casey Anthony and all these other trials. And now this case, we're just waiting to hear what the pundits have to say. And as you said, we're getting it through these weird lenses. So it's just, I think we want to watch, like, if you, let's say you're at work and your soccer team is playing, how excited do you hear about someone talk about the game at the end of the day because you couldn't watch it? And I think that's kind of part of this. They should have let us have, if this is such a groundbreaking, important case, we should have had cameras in the courtroom.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would. Yes. And I think with this one too, like with an OJ or the Menendez and all those cases, yeah, it's kind of like a who done it. Did they or didn't they do this, which was, essentially murders, right? And
Right.
in this case, we have this did he didn't do what, and it's not like, well, we're pretty sure like he probably had some, kind of fling with Stormy. That doesn't seem to be, I think most people, I don't know if they're conceding that point or not, but whatever. Like it seems like, okay, yeah, like they sound like they were in the same place and maybe in the same bedroom. I don't know exactly what happened, but and it's and that's kind of the most interesting part. It's the most entertaining part of the whole thing. And then and that's the who done it. But the who done it in this thing is, okay, so he paid somebody off, he paid somebody else, he had somebody else pay her and cut a different check. And it's like a it's like it's like it's like with the old Elliot Ness films and stuff. And I imagine
Right.
when um uh, Kevin Costner played Elliot Ness in the movie, and they're
Right.
going after the big gangster, and they're going after Al Capone, and they do this whole thing, and then they end up getting him on tax evasion,
Right.
right?
Which isn't
All the
sexy.
murders and all the good
Right.
stuff was, and it ends up being this boring procedural stuff. And by own admission, I am a recovering attorney, and I can't stand that bullshit. I can't. It's just wound up in all that detail of you don't really understand the law, it's not who done it, it's just not simple. So it's not even from the sheer interest in entertainment value of the production, as I'll call it, itself. It's not that interesting.
No, I
That
agree,
part's
and I
bad.
think
It's a
that
bad start.
I think it's a if you work through it, I think most people probably believe he had an inappropriate whatever with her. But then, so let's assume that everybody agreed that that was true, which isn't true. But let's assume everybody did. That's really not what the case is. The case is, okay, so did he decide to pay her off? Okay, then you have some debate about that and whether that's even illegal or not. And then how did he do it? Did Michael Cohen or whatever, did he know? And was it just like there's so many goofy dots to connect that it's
Right.
not interesting. It's
No,
not
it's not.
and everybody's already decided.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other. Yeah, that's the other. And then when you pull out to the 30,000 foot view of where this fits in, I mean, I do start to ask questions about would the New York prosecutors have been so interested in this thing had it been other than Donald Trump, had it been other than this whole thing? Would they? Is this? I may have heard some stuff, I know, but I'm just so tired. I don't even want to listen to it. But I don't. I think this is a first of a kind for them that they've ever prosecuted, but it might be the first of a kind event too. So I don't know that is the answer in this case. It's not dispositive of the outcome here, that they're just witch hunting, but they are kind of. It does seem like it's a little bit of fishing for something,
Sure.
and it's the kind of stuff that people who are prominent, like Trump, it's the detail stuff that they do all the time that, as sick as it is, and we're kind of comfortable with this part, I guess, is they usually get away with these kind of things, right?
I
And
think
they slap on the wrist, pay a fine,
if
and you go
you
away.
hate Donald Trump and you think he should be prosecuted, let's say you're that one of those people.
Right.
I think those people would even honestly say this case is the least um I guess they're all unpresidential if he's guilty of all of them. But if this one is the one where it's like, well, all politicians cover up their affairs. Because I think most of us believe that 80% to 90% of US presidents probably had a girlfriend at some point, right? Like we've watched mini series when we were on TV growing up. We know about Thomas Jefferson, we know about George Washington. Like maybe Abe Lincoln didn't, but like you know,
His rumors are a little bit different.
I don't know. Like yeah, right. Like, but so this one, should he go to jail for it? And that I know that's not what the charge is, but that's the interesting part. And
Right.
and I think most of us don't care about campaign, that he illegal money and he wrote a check, and it's just I
Yeah,
think
is it
most
appropriate
people,
business? If it's
yeah.
not an appropriate business expense, expense, then it's like tax fraud because you put it down as a business expense and you paid it out, and you should have, which reduces the company's taxable income or
Right.
his taxable income, and that's kind of a fraud. That's a tax fraud thing, and that now we're back to
I
Elliot
think if
Ness and
this
Al
was one of
Capone.
the other cases, like the Florida documents case or the Georgia election interference, if it was those cases, and I don't know if those, I don't think we're ever going to see.
They're
I
not
think
going to get there before November,
I
so.
don't think they're ever going to happen. I
Right,
think
and then if we do get there, if it does happen after November, then we're gonna Trump's gonna break the next new barrier by figuring out whether or not he can
well, and I think the Supreme
can
Court's
pardon
going to
himself.
say, well, you can't, and we're not sure, so send it back, and that's spend another two
Well,
years, and that's what if you wanted Trump prosecuted, you have to admit that if on the federal level that Garland is a joke. Like it took him 3 years to decide to do anything,
yeah.
and that should have been fast tracked. And then uh, the Smith, the prosecutor, should have been appointed like a
Well,
12 months into this, not, and then same thing in Georgia. Georgia took too long, and most of us feel like they were, well, you were kind of waiting until he was till the campaign season got started. Like it smells bad, and
yeah.
even if
Well,
you're hardcore Democrat and you want him in jail, you have to be frustrated by the lack of the justice system's wheels not moving quickly.
I mean, if you go back to, I mean, if you're, I mean, if any extent is if you're defending Trump on this, it was kind of like your bites at the apple came when you were in the appropriate forum of the United States Congress and they brought impeachment proceedings against him
Right.
and they failed. Mitch
McConnell.
McConnell
Yep.
kind of bailed on it, right?
Yep.
He did the political end run and said, there's no case here, so there's nothing to see, which the Democrats just turned around and just did to replicate it with the was it Mayorkas or whatever. There's
Right.
nothing to see here. There's no case, so we're not even going to talk about it and have a vote thumbs up or thumbs down on it. They just poo-pooed the whole thing. So the whole thing gets shat aside, and that was really for the wrongdoing. That was the bite at the apple. And many might say our system failed us miserably in that circumstance, which it may have, but that was kind of the bite at the apple. That was the remedy for all those things that are kind of all wrapped up in these ongoing cases, even the ones that have more validity. But I'm just saying that's the argument of where things went wrong, and is the argument of why why Washington is so literally fucked up.
Well, and I think that's part of the big picture why people just don't pay attention. Like,
Right. It's the fix is in.
yeah,
Like
like
I looked at these things and it's like, even if you thought, well, okay, so throwing back to 30,000 feet again with the academics and everybody else out there, they're like, stop Trump from getting back into the White House at any cost, whether you have to put him in Leavenworth or whatever,
right.
and or I'm sure he'd be in some nice cushy white collar prison. He'd be with the shaman guy requesting the organic foods or whatever. He was in jail briefly. And so there's that whole thing, and then like you have to and we have to stop them, and all these things are bad, and yes, they're bad, but I think we're partly anesthetized because Trump's done so many oddball things that are out of the ordinary, at least at a minimum, to put it mildly to some. And And we kind of know, we all know the people with money who get away with shit, right?
Right.
All the people and people of prominence that get away with shit. And again, going back, OJ wasn't the lead, was right in that category, right? Kind of, well, they're never going to get him just because he was famous, and
And there's a
and I
lot of
liked
people
him.
who felt
And
that he, it, not that he did, I don't know, like, there's a lot of people that thought he was guilty, but they still cheered when he got off, because
right,
they believed that the system
was rigged
was
against him.
corrupt. I
Yep.
mean, look at it from if you're just an average person and you ask them, what do you think of the Trumps thing?
I'm
They're
regular. I'm
they're
not
gonna,
average.
regular person. They're going to say, if you think of it from the perspective of the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, corrupt. It's corrupt. They're like,
Yes.
you got a guy, he's got an RV and vacations, and they bought his house for his mom, and then she's living there, and they were going to turn it into a museum. And that's just one of the guys. And then you got the other ones, and they're like, oh, I didn't know. Like, okay, sure. Like,
They all got their hand in the cookie jar, and
so
everybody's sitting there,
if you don't have any faith in the highest court in the land, why are you going to have any faith in the lower courts? Because everybody can, even if you are extremist, you can never count. But Clarence Thomas's wife was clearly offering advice to the president, and now we're going to have a court case in every. He should be recusing himself, but he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's if just that one thing, just people are like, I'm out. I'm going to go watch The Voice, because
Right.
it's like,
right, which may also be rigged, but at least the consequences are less.
Wait, reality TV is rigged? Wow.
But at least it's less. At least it's less impactful on society.
I think we're just so bored of these two old people and all the drama, and this guy, and you said, and her server, and even if I did do it, I'm allowed to do it. And it's just like just
right. It's like, yeah. Right.
And meanwhile, young people can't afford a mortgage, and then old people say, well,
what was Clinton's thing? The definition of was that his?
Yeah, to me, what do you mean by the definition of
what is?
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at the whole thing, and it's just, and quite, said, when I was looking, 30,000 feet, the people say, okay, we got to prevent this guy to come in, because we're going to end up with, a fascist regime if he comes back in, and he's going to be this authoritarian, and he's going to take away everybody's, people's individual rights and stuff like that. They may have valid concerns on those things, but at the same time, there was a reminder, Hitler and Mussolini both were in jail for a while, and I don't know if it helped. I don't know if it helped stop them from going to higher heights. Than they might have otherwise.
I've been legitimately more concerned about the Republican getting back in the office versus the other guy. But at the same time, I do feel that the system the country will survive. Especially if I don't really believe that whichever one wins will have control of both houses. And as long as one person doesn't have control of both houses, you can't get much done that's that extreme. And usually, even if they do, because I think Trump had a majority for a while, and I think Obama had the super majority for a while.
Slight, yeah.
In 2 years, it switched.
Yes.
The system is.
The threat is if somebody overrides those systems. The theory of the strong president executive branch is kind of, and the executive does have far more authority than they had, probably in the whatever the old days were, but many moons ago. It's
only with this dude. So this dude's not going to be around forever. And I don't think the next dude's going to have or woman are going to have that whatever je ne sais quoi that he seems to have that
Right.
people really love about him, I don't think anyone's going to be super excited about his, I don't know if he's going to try to appoint his son
No,
or,
it's je ne sais quoi. Is that French
like,
for what the fuck is
yeah,
that?
like
Is that what means? Sorry, I'm
I
on the
mean,
F-bomb trail today.
you know, so that's why I'm not too worried about it. I mean, we
Yeah,
have a rough couple of
I just
years.
can't and if you watch the major news networks, a little bit, I do a little bit in the morning, and I usually try to keep up on things. And when they start talking about this, I just like tune it out. I flip to the other channel,
Me
or I
too.
turn it off.
I'm
I
just
just I
like,
just tune it out. Like, I do not want to hear the procedural details, about, this or that. And, I mean, could you imagine being on the jury for this thing? Like,
yeah,
I guess there's a chance that you can make a lot of money, but God, I don't even know if anybody's going to want to make a movie out of this thing because it's so friggin' boring. And but, God, I mean, like, and they're like identifying these people. Like, could you imagine? Like, shit, you're gonna piss off one person on one extreme or the other. Like, I don't want these people
assume
camping outside my house based
tomorrow
on the
the case
decision.
was over and the jury came back in record time and said he's guilty. Um, then they'll appeal it, and it'll be blah,
Right?
blah,
It'll
blah,
sit
like,
there,
and
and
it,
I, and
it,
I
and
I
then
don't,
it's gonna
I don't,
go. It's
I
gonna
don't
go
think
all
you
the
can
way to
find
Supreme
12
Court.
people who don't
Yeah,
have skin in the game here enough to put the kibosh on this thing, and the best you're going to get is a hung jury. I just
right.
don't see there being any other answer than that. I don't care what kind of process you went through to vet the jury. Somebody up there is a hidden trumper and going to kill the thing.
Possibly.
You know,
Yeah,
whether real or 1 out of 12. Come on, there's got to be
yeah.
somebody.
And ultimately, if you're an average person, regular person, even more regular than us,
Yes.
that's not following this at all, and you know of people, whether it's yourself or your brother or your cousin, who did was in court for something and they went to jail with far less evidence and were talked back to the judge and went and like he already is treated differently. So that's part of it. Like I I don't have any. I'm not voting. Like there's a mindset. I'm not voting because it's the whole system's stupid. It's corrupt, and they're all lying to us.
There you
So I
go.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
it's it's
another
just
episode of
yeah.
this show.
It's just
Classic.
it's there's any. This morning I turned on the TV, like 6 o'clock or whatever when
Yep.
I wake up
Me
like I
too.
normally do, and I tried to watch Morning Joe for about 30 seconds and then I forget what they were talking, and I just changed it. I was like,
And you have to sit there and listen to Minka, like, with her astonished her sighs over there every time,
was
like
that
everything, like,
yesterday
just,
where
oh my
she was
God.
very upset, and especially when they talk about sports and she gets really, really, really frustrated. Except soccer. She's okay when they talk about soccer.
Oh, I was so happy they talked about my loser Pittsburgh Pirates pitchers the other day, and I was like, "Wow, they finally brought up something." Because I really don't give a rat's ass about certain things that they talk about, but yay, finally something. But I didn't
I,
even want to listen to that. But yeah,
I
this stuff is just over.
their morning television to me should be a little bit lighter, and it usually is. But right now, it's frustrating for me. I think, and if people listen to this know my frustrations about Israeli and Palestine, and again, we've said in previous episodes, the way the media is covering it is very frustrating to me. So it's already hard to watch anything that comes up about the Middle East because I don't like their coverage about that. So I'm already switching the channel for that stuff anyway. So then when the trial stuff comes up, now I'm switching the channel again. So I don't, and then like
well, like I just kind of with all this stuff is like, I I mean, people are creating, kind of what's the point, right? And people the people who want to see these things on both sides, the people who want to see it go away are saying it for the wrong reason, and the people who want to see it proceed are kind of saying it for the
so
wrong reason.
something as simple as interest rates,
Yes,
inflation.
yes,
When's the last time they've had a real discussion on any news program about real things that are hurting people in this country.
You, you,
Inflation is down and interest rates, but the Fed was supposed to change the interest rates 3 times and they haven't changed it once, and they're probably going to go back up. So like, but no one, they can't find 3 minutes to talk about the economy except when they drop the quarterly employment numbers or something.
Yeah, or you can turn to Fox News and hear about, all immigration all the time, which again, I don't disagree with some of the things that they're talking about there. I do think we have to be stricter on the border, but I don't know that I have to trail every immigrant into every city in America and make a story out of it every day and all the time.
What is it? Narcocan or whatever they're bringing across the border,
which is kind of a fiction because they're
like fentanyl coming across the border.
But actually, the illegal immigrants aren't the reporters, and you have to dig high and hard. Who did the research on these things found the evidence that most of the stuff, it's not being brought on the backs of people wading across the Rio Grande. Or going through the Sonora Desert in Arizona. It's not those people. It's coming in other ways.
Well, obviously you're down in the south. I'm up here up in the north, and I have this big gorge that separates me from Canada. And guess what they're using to drop drugs into the United States? Drones.
Yeah. I remember
they caught them the other day.
Right, exactly. Right.
So there's more efficient ways to traffic drugs into the United States across the Mexican border than hiring some guy from El Salvador and his family to go 3,000 miles to get to the border. And I agree with you. The border's a mess, but it's a mess for the same reason that everything else the government does is a mess.
It's a mess, right? Because
it's not one guy's fault. He passed that law, but he kept that law. They complain about the IRS, but now you've been in for 3 years and you didn't hire anybody. I thought you were mad, and it was do you
remember when it used to be the trial lawyers that were the scourge of the universe, and they still are because they're on all the billboards and all the TV channels.
Right.
By the way, I don't know what we would do I don't know how we would ever get free TV without trial attorneys and insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. Got to be in the top. Those three must make up 75% of all TV advertising. On a different note, but
it must work.
It must, right?
I didn't realize anybody still watched TV. So I'm not sure how much they're paying for those ads, because
I do my best to skip through whenever I do watch it. So but that's it's everywhere. You can't, when you're watching games or whatever, the things that still are on regular TV.
It is fun when you goes to another place on vacation, and then there's, like here we had Celino and Barnes, and now they're separate places now. But if you go down south, there's whoever the guy is, and he's got the same commercial,
right?
And it's like his number is like 777777777.
Yeah, right.
Over here, it's just a slightly different number.
But there's multiples of them here. I think the biggest of them are Morgan and Morgan. I think
my favorite up here is William Attar, because it rhymes with car. So if you're hurt in a car, you call William.
Yeah, we have the guy, the one call that's all guy. We have him. Yeah. So they're all out there. But anyways, finishing up on the Trump thing, and the hush money trial. I don't know. It's just there's a level of reality around it that just doesn't seem, like I said, the difficulty of convicting him, the kind of, this thing is not really, this trial is not really being tried in the court of public opinion, because the public either already made up their mind or isn't interested.
Or you can't watch it.
Yeah, and you can't
watch it. And you can only listen to whatever number of random people that are allowed in there. And I think that's, it's not like uh, when we were watching the OJ trial, and it was the same reporters or, uh,
Right.
or in
And it
court
was limited,
TV,
and we
where
didn't
they
have all
were
the
sitting
channels.
there and they were commenting during the proceedings, which I think was interesting. I think if we were watching the trial and those experts were saying, well, that's a procedural thing, and that's why we're all experts on the law now, because of watching those court TV. We didn't have to go to law school. But
Right.
if it's like you said, he can't be tried in the court of public opinion because nobody's seeing the trial.
Right.
They
And
can read off or show us little.
and nobody's interested in the reports that are coming out of it because it's just too convoluted and stupid. And you're just like, all right, guilty or not guilty? What's your prediction? Guilty or not guilty? Or well, a hung jury, which is essentially a not guilty.
I think it's probably a hung jury,
Yeah.
and it'll be like they'll come out and say, "Well, we're going to probably refile," because they can do the refile,
Hmm.
um, and that'll never happen. And and then Trump will make a speech, and then Biden will make a speech, and then they'll fight at the debate. And um, it's and the sad part it is the reason New York, if you believe them, they wanted to show that anybody has to,
Face
follow
the
the law
music, right?
and no
Yeah.
one's above the law. But they've already disproved that he is above the law, because if any other defendant did the things in the court that this guy's done,
Yeah.
um, he would have been locked up just for whatever they call it, for at least if Law and Order's accurate. Like it seems like he's already proven that he got special treatment
Yeah,
in
it's
all
kind of
these
like, you
cases.
don't see too many 19-year-olds at college campuses or 17-year-olds in the suburban high schools getting picked up for drugs. But you might inside the city.
Right.
It's just kind of the way it is. It's the way
Yep.
of the world. So we'll follow up enough in future episodes to talk about whether we were right with our prediction, and hopefully something more interesting will happen. But maybe in some upcoming stuff. I mean, I do want to talk a little bit about, not so specifically around interest rates, but maybe about housing as a crisis and how that whole thing's changed and all that sort of stuff. I think these are things that are more interesting. I mean, I think the election is. I mean, sooner or later. I mean, do you have the feeling? I mean, are you? I mean, I'm kind of avoiding it, and I don't. I mean, I don't usually raise the topic of the election, and with almost
Nobody's going to
anybody.
care about the election till September.
Right? I think it's, and I think everybody wants it to be a short run up to it after they do, like, and they can have their little, maybe
I don't
after their
care if you're up by
convention.
20 points right now in a state. Um, that could change. Um, but when it comes down to it, there's 6 states that will be in play, and
Right?
that's it. You know,
Won't be mine, won't be yours.
yeah. I
So
mean,
we're
and that doesn't help. Um, and then the electoral college concept and all that stuff is a whole nother thing. But
it's
when you're talking about the home ownership, it's the this just saw a report the other day about like the number of companies that are buying private homes now,
yeah.
and that's definitely something that I think that most people don't understand how that's affecting the market, even in a small city like mine.
Yeah, everything's affecting the market. So, well,
Yeah.
the most interesting I saw today on the news was that the British are going to, their Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is calling for elections on July 4th,
All
American
right.
Independence Day, nonetheless. But they were supposed to be later in the year, but I think they're being overshadowed by the American election. And one of the far right conservative persons said, this is a British official. They said, they quoted him as saying that they wanted to have it early, but because he wants to focus on getting Donald Trump reelected in
Oh,
November.
good. Well, that's what's
Well,
important. That another
um,
country's getting involved.
right. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you? So apparently, though, the conservatives in Britain are about to have their ass handed to them, and the center left party is supposed to take over. So, um, Well, like here, all these things I think ebb and flow a little bit. It's just interesting to see it in another place going on the same way to
For
some
sure.
extent.
Okay.
Anywho, that's all I got for today. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
Yeah, I
We
wish
can
it
talk
was
about Euros. That's coming up.
Euros coming up.
The
There you
Euros are
go.
coming up.
Right. Those are going to be some games that I'm going to be interested in,
Yeah, I'm super
and
excited about Euros.
and I'm going to watch them directly.
Yeah.
Who's your dog in the flight? I'll be obviously rooting for my home team, Italy.
I'm I like England. I'm
So
a big fan of the country of England.
we'll have to have
Uh,
a battle.
like I love the country. So I seem to identify more with a lot of the players from that country. So I tend to root for England. Um, you know,
I identify with most of the Italian players, so
yeah. So
and I follow their league and spend a fair amount of time there. So
I don't think
well,
we've even gotten the groups yet, have we? We don't know the groups yet, do
no,
we?
we do. I think we do.
I have to look it up.
I
And
think
even
so.
like that, I think until it gets closer, until Premier League's
No,
just
the
finished,
leagues. Yeah, no, the
and
groupings
then
I'm sure are out, and I think
because we
Italy's.
got FA Cup and we got Champions League final, and then that's kind of when I'll start
Yeah,
focusing on
I
Euros.
think Italy's in maybe the first day of games. I think, and I think it's like June 14 or something like that.
Okay.
So start marking your calendars,
Yep.
pick out your team, and I'm hoping that your team, England, doesn't get revenge for the last time around in the Euros.
They won't. Those because Southgate's an idiot. So like, he's gonna take Phil Foden
I don't
Player
have
of
much
the Year.
confidence in our team.
If
I don't
he's
know
like,
if
Phil
somebody lights
Foden's
a
really
fire.
good in this position, he can't play there. He has to play over here. He already said that. And I'm like, oh my God.
If
Like,
somebody lights a fire under the Italian team, and well, actually, it's not lights a fire under them. It's kind of like gets their minds focused, and they play as a team and play sound defense. They can have a chance, but I just don't see it because they don't have the scorers up front.
yeah.
They just can't do that, and even their best defenders have gone away too. So
I do like Euros a lot because it is such a you'll have a team with like 5 amazing guys, and then they'll have like that's it. And the rest of the team is like they're not even that high up, and they're playing on a mid-level team in their own whatever league they're coming from, and it's from like it's in
Turkey.
Netherlands or something, Turkey or something. And it's so this team, because they've got 3 or 4 amazing guys, they should do well, and then they just don't, because like Belgium, how with that team, how were they never successful?
They
I
would. I
mean,
know, right? They
I
did
mean,
this. They just never are.
I
Somehow
mean,
they do it. I think
I
it's.
mean, they have
I think
they
they're
had
confused because
that,
they have some players speaking Dutch, some speaking German, and some speaking French, and they just can't get it straight.
yeah,
Or
maybe,
Flemish, whatever it is that they speak there. I don't
yeah,
know. I'm joking.
it's fun.
But anyways, Rich, thanks for another fine podcast episode. Enjoyed it very much. Next week we'll be on to something new. And everybody, reminder to look for the next podcasts and old ones on our website, was that 4Ws? www.lyingtous.com. And you can find this podcast and others on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on our YouTube channel. Thanks very much. On May 23rd, I'm signing off. Until next time, have a good one.